A federal Justice Department report released today accuses the RCMP of suppressing evidence in the wrongful conviction case of Glenn Assoon, who spent nearly 17 years in prison for murder. The controversial abortion movie Unplanned hits theaters in Canada today, including a showing right here in Lethbridge. And campers north of Montreal experienced some scary moments last night as Environment Canada confirms a tornado struck a campground, causing considerable damage.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jeanette Roche. Hal Roberts is off today. The controversial movie Unplanned hit the big screen in Lethbridge this weekend, along with many other theaters across Canada. The film has been creating quite a stir in certain parts of the country, but outside the movie mill today in Lethbridge, where it was released, no protesters were present. BCN spoke with some members of the public who were there to see the movie.
We've come to support Unplanned because we strongly believe in life, from womb to tomb. Unplanned has a beautiful story to tell us about choosing life and what that means. And in this day and age when we get to choose everything else, we realize that there's an important message to be made to choose life.
We recently aired the interview with two of the producers of the movie Unplanned and BCN's Hal Roberts. Here's a little clip from that interview.
We didn't make this movie as a political statement. We made this movie for the hundreds of millions of women and men that are suffering from angst from having an abortion. This is about hope and love and forgiveness and, of course, redemption. And so what we ask people to do is just basically make your decision after you've seen the movie.
Nikayuka Japanese Gardens turns 52 today. The Deputy Council of Japan was in attendance for the first time, as well as city officials. The Oriental Motion Dance Group from Calgary also stopped by to show off their moves. The gardens have seen growth each and every year.
So today is the 52nd anniversary of Nikayuka Japanese Garden. We're celebrating it, the friendship between Japan and Canada today. We've got the Deputy Consulate General of Japan, Mr. Yasuhiko Tanaka, who's coming to bring his greetings, and we're really honored to have the embassy here, as well as a number of other dignitaries. We've got the mayor here, and MLA East, Nathan Newdorf, is coming as well.
We're doing something a little bit different than we've done in previous garden anniversaries on the garden's birthday. Normally we partner up with the taiko groups that are around Lethbridge, and that's a pretty common performance that we have. We'll be having those on Saturday and Sunday, but for today we've requested that Sari come in and perform, and what she does is a type of Japanese fusion dance, so it combines a number of different types of dance genres, and this is the first time we've had her, so I'm really excited about having her perform for everybody at the garden.
The Canadian Embassy is also celebrating 90 years of diplomatic relations with Japan this year. The city's fire department water rescue team was demonstrating safety tips for floaters, boaters, and swimmers using the Old Man River today.
It's good to have a good set of water shoes so that if you do have to exit the river, you're not trekking through. There's lots of rocks and tree branches and weeds and whatnot, so it's good to have a set of shoes to wear when you're coming out. Your phone, if you want to bring your phone with you, put it in a Ziploc bag so that it doesn't get wrecked and you can have contact in case something does happen. There has been times in the past where there has been medical emergencies that arise out on the water, so it's good to have those cell phones so you can communicate if it's needed.
For more information on water safety, visit www.redcross.ca. In just 1 week, a Lethbridge teen will be participating in the Miss World Canada pageant in Toronto. Ashton Wesley was reluctant to join the pageant circuit at first, but says it's helped her gain confidence she didn't know she had. The past few months, she has been preparing for the title.
I get my mom to ask me questions when we're walking around. I practice in my garage how to walk, and it's been really fun. It just seems like these 5 months have turned into kind of like 2 months. It went by so fast. It's just a great adventure. I don't know. I really encourage young women all across our country to participate in these if they ever have a chance, because it does open great doors for you, and build such a confidence in yourself. So I would love to put that out there.
On July 13th, Wesley will be hosting a charity event at Henderson Pool to support the Children's Wish Foundation. The Junior Canadian Little League Championships will be taking place starting July 27th and wrapping up on August 4th. The Lethbridge Bulls released a tournament schedule this afternoon and announced the host team.
We're hosting it for the 10th consecutive year as the permanent host site of this division of Little League's championships. The winning team gets to go on to the Junior League World Series in Taylor, Michigan in August.
It's always an honor when you can host such a big tournament in your own community, and it's a really good experience for the kids. Over the last 10 years, you've had a lot of kids that have gone through this, and all that feedback trickles down to some of the younger kids, and they're all very excited to participate and looking forward to some really good games.
7 teams from all over the country will be participating in the tournament. All of those teams will be staying together in dorm rooms at Lethbridge College. The organizing committee is calling it a mini Olympic Village. For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
The Lethbridge AAA Bisons are currently looking for a provincial title at home. Thursday night, they defeated Medicine Hat 11-0. And a third horse has died during this week's events at the Calgary Stampede. The chairman of the Stampede's Chuck Wagon Safety Commission says a crash during a race that fatally injured a horse was preventable. This following a collision during the 7th heat of a Thursday's Rangeland Derby competition. Officials say the driver impeded another driver's chuck wagon and caused a third rig to collide with the track's inner rail, resulting in critical injuries to the horse. The driver has been fined $10,000 and barred from competition. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau rejects Conservative claims that national unity is under threat and says that Conservative politicians are playing petty politics. Trudeau stopped to visit workers today at Edmonton's Trans Mountain Pipeline Terminal.
It's really important to me as Prime Minister that I be saying the same things right across the country. And coming out here to talk about not just the pipeline expansion, but our need to have a serious plan to fight climate change is something that all Canadians need to hear. We have Conservative politicians trying to pretend that there's still a choice between the economy and the environment, and demonstrating that they are not serious about actually moving forward on the greatest challenge of our time, fighting climate change. It is important that the Prime Minister be here to remind Canadians that we do not have to pit one corner of the country against each other.
Nearly $33,000 worth of cocaine has been seized in Medicine Hat, and 2 alleged drug traffickers have been arrested following a pair of investigations by Alert's organized crime team. The suspects were arrested in 2 separate traffic stops. A search of the vehicles uncovered a combined 329 grams of cocaine. A report released today from the Federal Justice Department accuses the RCMP of suppressing evidence in the case of a man who was wrongly convicted of murder. The assessment into the case of Glenn Assoon, who spent nearly 17 years in prison for the murder of his former girlfriend, says Mounties didn't disclose their theories about other suspects to Assoon as he tried to prove his innocence, including the possibility that a serial killer was the true culprit. RCMP says mistakes were made, but there was never any intentional cover-up. Conservative MPs want Canada's intelligence agency to probe whether a former Canadian ambassador is encouraging China to interfere with the upcoming federal election. John McCollum recently told the South China Morning Post that more harmful actions against Canada would only help the Conservatives get elected. 2 Conservatives say in a letter to CSIS Director David Vigneault that the comments are very disturbing and deserve the scrutiny of his agency. Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland said yesterday that it's highly inappropriate for any Canadian to advise any foreign government how it could influence a Canadian election. Victoria Mayor Lisa Helps says the city will review its options after BC's top court quashed a bylaw prohibiting single-use plastic bags. The BC Court of Appeal handed a victory to the Canadian Plastic Bag Association, ruling the city failed to get approval from the province's environment minister.
Obviously, this was not the decision we were hoping for, but we fundamentally believe that the city does have, and cities do have, the ability to regulate businesses and their sustainable practices. So we will be reviewing the decision and looking at all of our options. What's really important to me and really exciting to me is our community has embraced this bylaw. Our business community has embraced this bylaw, and since the time the bylaw came into effect, it stopped 17 million plastic bags from going into our landfill. So this is a bylaw that was really created in partnership with business.
Environment Canada is confirming a tornado struck a campground north of Montreal last night, causing considerable damage. Meteorologists were on site today in the community north of Montreal to make the determination. Alexandra Parent says the damage has all the hallmarks of a weak tornado, but it will take officials a few more hours to determine the twister's wind speed and intensity. Camping Horizon owner Alex Karen says one person was injured after strong winds caused the trailer he was in to roll over. Tropical storm Barry is maintaining its strength as it moves towards Louisiana, where it threatens to bring heavy rains and flooding. The U.S. National Hurricane Center says the storm is forecast to be a hurricane when its center reaches the coast. In New Orleans, residents are preparing for the incoming storm differently, and their perspective likely comes from whether they lived through Katrina.
It's kind of an eerie breeze that blows, that never blows up until a hurricane is coming. During Katrina, we just didn't have a warning, to get out. I just happened to manage a hotel, so I went there. This was all waterlogged.
We're not going to evacuate. We're just going to ride it out. We've kind of taken the attitude that this is what we signed up for. We live in New Orleans. This is what happens. I can't get scared every time something bad happens. And maybe that's my new post-Katrina moving here, that I haven't had that terrible situation happen.
The U.S. Labor Secretary Alex Acosta is resigning amid new scrutiny of his handling of a 2008 plea deal with Jeffrey Epstein, the wealthy financier accused of sexually abusing dozens of underage girls. Acosta was the U.S. attorney in Miami when he oversaw the agreement that allowed the billionaire to avoid federal charges, but federal prosecutors filed new sex trafficking charges against him this week.
He made a deal that people were happy with, and then 12 years later they're not happy with it. You'll have to figure all of that out, but the fact is he has been a fantastic Secretary of Labor. And Alex called me this morning and he wanted to see me, and I actually said, well, we have the press right out here, so perhaps you just want to say it to the press. But I just want to let you know, this was him, not me.
Thank you, Mr. President. Over the last week, I've seen a lot of coverage of the Department of Labor. And what I have not seen is the incredible job creation that we've seen in this economy, more than 5 million jobs. I haven't seen that workplace injuries are down, bucking a 3-year trend. Workplace fatalities are down, bucking a 3-year trend. That we had the safest year ever in mining, the lowest number of fatalities ever in mining. I have seen coverage of this case that is over 12 years old, that had input and vetting at multiple levels of Department of Justice. And as I look forward, I do not think it is right and fair for this administration's Labor Department to have Epstein as the focus rather than the incredible economy that we have today. And so I called the president this morning. I told him that I thought the right thing was to step aside.
Some great new movies are playing at the Mill. Let's have a look at this week's Movie Mill Minute.
Unplanned, opening in select theaters across Canada, including here at the Mill on July 12th. The true story of a young Planned Parenthood clinic director, Abby Johnson, who wanted to help women as much as possible with their right to choose, until the day she saw something that changed everything.
I saw it, and it was like it was twisting and fighting for its life.
We commend the souls of these hundreds of children. And Lord, we pray to end abortion.
Anna, Beneath this model's beauty lies a secret that will unleash her strength and skill to become one of the world's most feared government assassins.
Anything suspicious?
Like what? Your next target is in Paris. There'll be no backup. Any questions? Which room?
The Tomorrow Man. In this romantic comedy, a gentleman who is obsessed with the future and a woman who can't stop living in the past meet each other in a small American town. Together, they learn how to embrace the present.
You only think about tomorrow, but I'm here. I'm here right now.
When they walk away.
A nice weekend is shaping up. We will have a look at the weather picture in just a moment. Well, summer is finally here. Today in Lethbridge, we had mainly sunny skies and a high of 29 degrees. Tonight, a few clouds and 14. Tomorrow, mainly sunny with a high near 30 degrees, a mix of sun and cloud, and 27 on Sunday. So it looks like a great weekend is shaping up. Looking ahead to Monday, sunny skies and 25, and the rest of the week will be all sunshine with daytime highs of 25 on Tuesday, 27 on Wednesday, and 28 on Thursday. Looking at the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 25 with an average low of 10. Highest temperature on this date was recorded in 1964 at 36 degrees. Our record low was 4 degrees in 2008. Sunrise was at 5:37 a.m. and sunset will be at 9:37 p.m. Now let's see how tomorrow is shaping up across the country. Victoria will have 21 degrees with periods of sun and cloud. It'll be sunny and 22 in Vancouver. A chance of rain for the Stampede in Calgary tomorrow with a high near 25. Edmonton will see lots of sunshine with highs of 26. Lots of sunshine also in Regina and a high of 30, but a 30% chance of showers with a high of 28 in Saskatoon. Over in Winnipeg, hot and sunny with a high of 29 degrees. Toronto will see a chance of rain, but a high of 30. Similar over in Ottawa, but 1 degree cooler at 29. Over in Montreal, lots of sunshine and also 29, but rain in Halifax and only a high of 23. And in Fredericton tomorrow, 25 degrees and a 30% chance of showers. In Charlottetown, periods of rain and 20 degrees, and over in St. John's, mainly cloudy and 18 degrees tomorrow. China's trade with the U.S. plunged last month as a tariff war battered exporters on both sides of the Pacific Ocean. Tensions between the world's two biggest economies continue to simmer, even though U.S. President Donald Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping called a ceasefire 2 weeks ago. Chinese customs data out today shows Chinese imports of American goods fell 31.4% in June from a year earlier to $9.4 billion. Exports to the American market declined 7.8% to $39.3 billion as China's trade surplus with the United States widened by 3%. Volkswagen and Ford announced a new partnership today to develop self-driving car technology. The two automakers will become equal owners of Argo L, a robocar firm that was majority owned by Ford, with plans to put autonomous vehicles on the roads in the U.S. and Europe.
We will collaborate, VW and Ford, with Argo on what we call the self-driving system, or the SDS. That means that Ford and Volkswagen will be able to reduce what is a large investment for this AV business. We'll also be able to co-create common AV platforms for now and in the future.
We can share significant R&D costs in the high triple-digit million-dollar area, and that's for Volkswagen alone. We will accelerate speed to market. Volkswagen will make use of the SDS platform by commercializing it in a vehicle in the early 2020s.
VW, the world's largest automaker measured by sales, has already invested $7 million into the new platform. The Business Development Bank of Canada is making an additional $300 million in commercial loans available over the next 2 years to support Atlantic businesses. The funding is in addition to the $280 million announced by the bank 2 years ago. BDC's Atlantic Funding supports commercially viable companies that are looking to grow, including acquisitions, change of ownership, and investment and export strategies. MTY Food Group, the franchisor and operator of a broad range of restaurants, is reporting a jump in second quarter revenue and profits. Net earnings were up 19% to $19.3 million, or 76 cents a share. Revenue was up nearly 22% to $130.6 million, boosted by an increase in the sales and acquisition of Casa Grecque last year. Now, here is a look at today's markets. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, a federal Justice Department report released today accuses the RCMP of suppressing evidence in the wrongful conviction case of Glenn Assoon, who spent nearly 17 years in prison for murder. Up next, Hal Roberts speaks with lawyer John Carpe about the human rights case of an esthetician who refused to wax a transgendered individual. But first, here is a look at what is happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Come for a fun time with the whole family to Summerfest and barbecue at City Light Church this Sunday, July 14th from noon to 2 p.m. Enjoy a free barbecue with all the fixings, plus so much fun for the kids with a petting zoo, bouncy castle, and more. Come celebrate Summerfest at City Light Church. The Heritage Acres Farm Museum is hosting its annual Quilt and Flower Show Saturday, July 20th from 1 to 5 p.m. Entry fee to the museum will be $10 per person, and those 16 and under are free. If you have a quilt you'd like to enter, contact Joe Baker at 403-627-2688. And for flower exhibits, call Barb Tomic at 403-627-3388. The 22nd annual Joel Nicholas Arnoldson Memorial Charity Golf Tournament is taking place Friday, August 16th at Paradise Canyon Golf Resort. Green fees are $190 per person, with proceeds going toward the Green Acres Foundation, which provides quality and affordable housing for seniors. For more information and to register, call 403-328-1155. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
Freedom of expression and freedom of religion are ideals most Canadians hold near and dear to our hearts, but often it appears that some rights are more dear to our judiciary than others. Joining me now from Calgary to discuss this further is John Carpe, President of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms. Welcome back to BCN, John.
Good to see you, Hal.
Now, you're representing a number of estheticians in BC who are being taken to the BC Human Rights Tribunal for declining to perform waxing services for a trans-identifying person. And one of them is Blue Heaven Beauty Lounge and its owner, Sandeep Banipal. Can you explain the story in a little more detail?
Well, Sandeep is a Sikh woman of the Sikh religion, and to help support her family, she works out of her home to provide what's known as the Brazilian bikini wax. And it's a very intimate service, which she provides for women only. She was contacted by a person who can only be identified as JY. And JY is a transgender person with male genitalia and asked for the Brazilian bikini wax. And this woman's response was along the lines of, sorry, I don't do this for men. And JY said, well, I'm not a man, I'm actually a woman. But the hearing took place in Vancouver on July the 4th, and JY has admitted to possessing male genitals. So we'll see how the Human Rights Tribunal responds to that. But JY filed a total of 13 complaints against women, many of them immigrant women, East Indian women, Sikh women, who do not want to, who want to provide services only to women. And the Justice Center is now acting for 3 women. In 2 hearings already took place, and another hearing coming up on July 17th. And we are arguing that part of the charter right to security of the person is that no woman should be forced or compelled by law to deal with male genitalia if that woman, as an esthetician or waxologist, wants to provide services to other women only.
Now, why is it wrong with declining this kind of service if it's not something that really lines up with your personal beliefs?
We've got human rights legislation, which now include in BC, Alberta, Ontario, every province, as well as federally, we have gender identity and gender expression are prohibited grounds of discrimination. So this is why this person, JY, has gone ahead and said that that JY wants to have the Brazilian bikini wax and forcing this. JY was, in some previous cases, has withdrawn when he learns that the woman is represented by a lawyer. But prior to that, tries to extract a settlement and say, well, pay me $5,000, pay me $2,000, and I'll go away. But now we're at a point where 3 of these hearings have actually proceeded to the Human Rights Tribunal, and there's a total media boycott. The CBC was not there, Globe and Mail, National Post, nobody was there. And I think that's probably because the media have a bias, and this case shows that the political correctness in Canada has gone way too far. But I think a lot of media don't like that. And so they're trying to give it the silent treatment. But there's somebody on Twitter that has sent out tweets that are being read by thousands of people all over the world. Somebody was in the courtroom and sending out tweets. So the word is getting out.
Do you think this could be precedent setting?
Oh, absolutely. It's precedent setting in some way, shape, or form, because the human rights ruling would be expected sometime, in the next month or 2 or 3. And it's quite possible that whoever loses at the hearing stage, whether that's JY, the complainant, or whether it's one or more of the women that JY has complained against, it's very likely and quite possible for the unsuccessful party to appeal it to the next level, which is the Supreme Court of British Columbia. From there, it could go to the BC Court of Appeal and so on. But it is an important case, in spite of facts that sometimes cause a bit of a chuckle, but it's actually quite serious. I mean, this is about your right to not be forced by law, by a government body, but to provide very intimate services.
John, I know a lot of non-religious people who would be very uncomfortable with a female being required to make house calls to a male client's home for genital waxing. Your thoughts?
Well, that was the second case that's already been heard. That one was heard on July the 5th. Now, this woman was not being asked to wax genitals, but was being asked to wax arms and legs of JY. But this woman does not want to go to the home of a man and perform that kind of service. And it's also a vulnerable woman, doesn't speak English that well. This is how she helps to earn money for her family and so on. So on that one as well, the security of the person should mean that a woman should not be compelled to go to a man's house and perform, even that's fairly intimate. Waxing arms and legs is a somewhat intimate service.
John, let's talk a bit about massage therapy. A lot of us, go visit an RMT. What if a female client asked for a female massage therapist, but all the therapists were male? Could she sue for gender discrimination?
Probably yes. I mean, this is the absurdity of where we're at. When the human rights laws were first came into being, they were sold as anti-racism measures, and a lot of people thought that sounded well and good. But they absolutely interfere with our freedom of association and freedom of contract and the freedom to set up certain kinds of businesses. A few years back, I heard of an oil change place that was women run only. All the employees were female, the owner, the manager. You know, and I think that's fine in a free country. If there's a bunch of women want to have set up a women-only oil change provider. But, you know, I wonder if there had been some guy that had applied for a job there, and if they said, we don't hire men, could have probably gone to the Human Rights Tribunal and gotten a ruling. We had the case in Nova Scotia of Muslim men in a karate school, and judo, pardon me, and said, well, in my faith, I can't touch another woman. Well, these are judo lessons, and you get partnered up with somebody else, and you do grab people by the shoulders, and you know there's some touching involved in judo. And the Human Rights Tribunal says, "Oh no, this judo studio has to change its practices and teach judo in a way that this person's not going to have to." You know, it's but until people start to take more notice of it and change the legislation to make it more appropriate, well, we're going to be stuck with these kinds of stories.
John, my daughter took judo, yeah, and it's a matter of grabbing the person's arm and you throw them over your shoulder and you roll them. I mean, that's what judo is, really. I mean, you can't really change the way you teach judo. But let me ask you something. If the BC Human Rights Tribunal happens to rule against you, what message does that send to people of faith?
Well, to this one, it's not really targeted at people of faith per se, but to people of faith, yes, and to other Canadians, it sends a message that we're really losing some of our freedom if you don't have the freedom to disagree with somebody else's self-identity. I mean, it's one thing for an individual to have it's one thing for a man to have the freedom to say that he identifies as a woman and, you know, maybe acts like a woman, wears makeup, wears female clothing. That could be part of your freedom of expression. It's quite a different thing to demand and impose through force of law that other people start referring to you as a woman. And this is where we're at with the human rights legislation. So if this case is lost, I mean, it will be appealed, right? So we'll get a higher court ruling at some point, but it certainly takes away from your freedom and my freedom when the government compels you to pay lip service to somebody else's beliefs. In a way, it's a form of coerced speech. I mean, again, it's one thing if a guy says that he's really a woman and calls himself Mrs. or Ms. and so on, okay, fine. But it's a very different matter if the law forces other people to agree with that and to express agreement with that. That is a form of compelled speech.
John, there's an interesting case involving the University of BC, which did allow controversial activist Jen Smith to give a public lecture on campus. But tell me what the catch was with this, and maybe explain to our viewers a little bit about who Jen Smith is.
Jen Smith is a transgender person, but a man who likes to dress up like a woman, but has been very outspoken against how transgenderism is being pushed and promoted in schools in British Columbia through the SOGI 123, which is Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity 123. And it's a curriculum that starts to tell kids at very young ages, starts to tell boys, well, there is no such thing as a boy and a girl, and you might not be a boy, and telling girls you might not be a girl, which a lot of parents, there's a legal case in Ontario, parents feel their daughter was harmed by the authority figures, teachers, telling her that she's not really a girl and she's a boy, she might be a boy. Anyway, Jen Smith has been very outspoken about this. Has the opinion that, if you want to get into all the transgender stuff, you should wait until you're 18, and has been a source of, has been targeted for censorship. I mean, talks have been shut down and disrupted while, police stand by and allow this to go on, even though disruption is actually illegal. Anyway, at UBC, Jen Smith was going to speak there and did speak there. And to its credit, UBC said, we support free speech, so this is going ahead. However, they used the censorship tool of the big security fees, which in my view is completely wrong because it punishes the speaker who's doing nothing wrong, and it punishes the speaker's audience, who are people that just want to come and listen. They get punished with having to pay security fees when the security fee should be imposed on the mob of people who want to engage in disruption or obstruction and shut events down, which is criminal conduct. They're the ones who should get the security fees. Here it was imposed on the event organizers.
John, can you chit-chat a bit about the cases involving a couple of registered charitable groups, 2 Bible camps, who applied for the federal summer jobs grant program but were denied? I'm guessing this ties in with last summer's controversial attestation, with applicants being forced to agree with the Fed's position on abortion in order to qualify for the grant?
Yes, in 2018, the federal government made it a condition of accessing this federal program that provides small, I think about $5,000 grants to small businesses and to nonprofits to hire a summer student. And it was a condition of accessing a federal government program that you check off an attestation box saying that you agree with Justin Trudeau's opinions about abortion. The Justice Centre took this to court. We acted for an irrigation business in southern Alberta whose owners did not want to tick off this box. And in response to this court action and others, fortunately, the federal government did change the attestation. So you no longer have to tell the federal government that you're for abortion and transgenderism in order to access a government program. So that's good. However, they're still trying to go after pro-life groups. The groups that we represent in 2019 are not even pro-life groups, but there was a Christian summer camp that applied, and no reasons were provided, except it kind of raises some suspicions because this same Christian organization the year before had refused to tick off the attestation for 2018. So we've taken that to court, and we're going to force the government to come up with some very express, specific, detailed reasons as to why this was refused, because right now we don't know.
Recently, the Justice Centre had the opportunity to testify at the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights, including its study into online hate in Canada. John, can you offer an update on that, and what are some of your concerns?
Well, the committee has made recommendations to bring back human rights legislation that would ban hateful speech. We have to remember we already have criminal code prohibition on the willful promotion of hatred. And the criminal code prohibition comes with some defenses, such as truth, which is good. If you can say that what you're saying is true, you're not getting into trouble over hate speech. Also, an exemption for raising a topic of public interest and also expressing an opinion based on a religious text, which of course would protect, say, Muslims, Christians, Orthodox Jews, who in their scriptures say that gay sex is sinful, would protect them from criminal prosecution at the behest of gay and lesbian lobby that would say that that's hate speech to express a religious view on sexuality. So we already have that in place, but this committee wants to extend the ban into human rights legislation where you do not have these protections of truth and expressing an opinion on a religious text.
Could you actually be charged with hate speech for maybe disagreeing with gay marriage, even though it's legal here in Canada?
Well, we've had human rights proceedings already in Saskatchewan. There was a case where somebody had a bumper sticker on his car. This was about 15, 20 years ago when there was a big debate about gay marriage. And it was a little stickman, kind of a stickman showing man holding woman, man holding the hand of a woman, yes, 2 men holding hands, no. Something like that will get you into trouble with human rights laws. Now, these are not criminal proceedings. They're similar to, for example, if you get a photo radar ticket or you get a speeding ticket, right? It's not criminal, but it's still, you're publicly branded as a bigot when a complaint is filed against you. And if you really want to defend against it, you're going to be out of pocket $10,000, $30,000, $50,000 in legal bills. So we really don't need anti-hate laws to be extended into human rights laws. They're already in the criminal code where you have appropriate protections for an accused person. But if we put this back into federal human rights law, we're looking at considerable loss of freedom of expression and religious freedom.
John Carpe, president of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, thanks a lot for joining me today from Calgary.
Thanks for having me on your show, Hal.
Being a parent of a teenager is never easy, especially in today's fast-paced world with ever-changing technology and media influence. Today's guest is an expert on parenting, Dr. Dave Curry, president of Doing Family Right. He's based in Abbotsford, BC. Welcome to BC, and Dr. Dave.
Hey, it's great to be here, Hal. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
You bet. So what is Doing Family Right all about?
Well, Doing Family Right is an organization designed to help people with their most important relationships, Hal: marriage, family, and God. And so we realize that kind of life kind of rises and falls with relationships, both vertically and horizontally. And so we just really love helping people see doing marriage and family God's way.
Now, teens get a lot of peer pressure. I mean, it happened when I was a kid, when you were a kid, and even today.
Yeah.
And that can undermine parental influence. How should parents really handle that?
Well, first of all, the most important thing is to continue to have a bona fide real relationship with kids. One of the things that parents make a mistake is as the kid gets older, they say, oh, he's now got more freedom. She's got, she can go on her own. And, it's not like when they were 2 and 4, I had to watch them all the time. And so they think as they get older that it's less time needed. But what happens is it's not less time as they get over, it's just different time. They got to keep finding ways to stay connected. Invariably, Hal, when parents say, oh, our kid's going off the rails, what do we do, Dr. Dave? Can we bring our kid in and you can fix him and all that? I ask them one question. I say, what are you doing with your teen that is either neutral or positive? Means something fun, neutral that they'll accept, or fun that they really want to do. And invariably, all those kids are rebelling because there's no relationship left with the parents. They're not doing anything with their kids. So basically, maintaining a relationship where you have a common ground and having fun and activity together is the best way to do it.
Any practical tips for communication between parents and teenagers? Because a lot of times teens have their own language altogether.
Sure. I think the most important thing is that mom and dad need to be on the same page. One of the most confusing things, if dad's saying A and mom's saying B, then what they'll do is they'll play one against the other, and teens are great at that. They become little lawyers, and they figure, I can divide and conquer you guys. And so mom and dad need to get on the same page. And secondly, is they have a common message. I always challenge parents to write down what they want, so that there's no misunderstandings and there's clarity on what curfews are and what phone expectations are. Right off our website, doingfamilyright.com, we have a contract for car driving, a contract for cell phone, and we tell parents, look, the more you can have these talks and actually get kids to hear and sign off on them, the better it is. So clear communications, agreed communication between mom and dad, so there's no way they can get between you. And after that, just again, keep the love going to the kids.
So being unified and creating that structure, I guess, is really key, isn't it?
Yeah, structure and its clarity, Hal. So that if Donalyn, my wife, and I have agreed on what we want for the kids and what we agree the boundaries are going to be on anything, technology or whatever, that we communicate the same message, that we're on the same page. It doesn't matter, I'm there, she's there. It's a consistent message, and that's good. And then the structure, we actually had our kids sign off. Now that you're driving the car, every 6 months, you got to read this with me. We review it, and you sign off for the next 6 months if you want to use the car. And, those kind of things are really helpful. And I just like maybe thinking along the lines of intentional parenting.
Now, Dr. Dave, a recent study came out here on a spike in teen suicides following the release of the Netflix TV series 13 Reasons Why, a graphic show depicting teen suicide. Is it possible that media can influence teens to the degree of even taking their own lives?
Yeah. Sadly, it's happened, and they've shown after a 19-year study of the rises and peaks of a suicide in any given year. It's pretty similar what happens in the months of a year after year, and there's not a lot of change. It's not growing incrementally. But the month after that series first aired, there was a significant spike the month after it was aired, with teenagers taking their lives all over North America and even in Australia and different places, because what happens, the movie kind of glorifies and glamorizes and almost normalizes that if you're going through hard times, this is a natural thing you'll likely do, because, you go through difficult things like bullying, or somebody decides to sexually assault you, or you get depressed, or you do some cutting or whatever because you're discouraged. well, the natural outcome is likely best to take your life. And of course, with all the hype and pretty people in the show, what kid wouldn't think? Well, gee, that's pretty logical. I guess that's a good option. And that's the sad thing about what's happening there.
So don't you think producers of a TV series like that should really be held accountable?
Oh my goodness, don't get me going on that. 100%. Because what's happening, they're saying things like, well, we're just going on to bring awareness. Okay, well, the problem is when you show a graphic depiction of a young woman, 17, taking her life, dying in her own bathtub there, and it was blow by blow, cut by cut, really graphic, and yet at the end, the whole thing is kind of, she's immortalized, memorialized as somebody, who really suffered, and we got to love her, and so post her death, it's almost like she's a poster child, and it really becomes a difficult thing for kids to put this in their head. Well, gee, maybe it isn't that bad. I really feel discouraged. And of course, at different times of their life, most teenagers have thought, is this bad enough to take my life? We all go through despondent times. But when we have media reinforcing it the way it is, and, seriously, there's at least 3 different cases where kids, after binge watching this show, took their life as this is the best thing to do.
Yeah, glorifying that is so wrong. You're right, Dr. Dave. Now, what advice would you have for parents as to how to set proper boundaries when it comes to watching television and movies? And how can we really protect our kids without really over-sheltering them?
Well, first of all, it's a really hard thing. And to be honest, Hal, it's less about TV and movies and more about the internet. Because Netflix is an internet-driven thing. Yes, you can watch it on TV, no problem, but you can watch it on your computer. You can watch it on your phone. So it's really talking about the whole digital world, and I call it technological warfare. Right? And how do we prepare our kids for online battle? And so there's really open discussions that have to be there. We need to monitor their internet use. Obviously, going back to TV, but it's way beyond TV. But what things they're watching, and even when it comes to the internet, to have the proper software to protect them from getting to questionable sites, to have filters on, to have actually limiters so that at 10 o'clock at night that the internet shuts down and nobody can look at anything because Wi-Fi shut off and stuff. And so, those are critical things to keep in mind just to kind of get started. And we got entire podcasts just on that question, on doing family right. And we'd love to help people with just, here's some great ideas of how to safeguard your home. What do you do if your kid runs into pornography? How do you prevent a kid from being influenced by bullies? All these kind of things that are kind of part of this, this whole thing about 13 reasons. I mean, we've answered those questions over and over to parents.
So how should a parent really respond if their teenager chooses not to follow your media boundaries, and let's say they want to watch this show at a friend's place? Do you really show them maybe some of the statistics of teens who've taken their lives across North America?
Yeah, actually, I think, Hal, we can't control them everywhere. We can do some controls in our house, but they can walk over to a friend's house and go to a cousin's place and whatever and maybe watch anything. So we obviously need to be checking into who their friends are. But likely the most important thing, Hal, is that all of these issues, all of these things that kids are going to face today, be it peer pressure, be it bullying, being it, selfies, being it sending naked pictures and, child pornography concerns and then watching questionable things, pornography, whatever. All of these things need to be talked about. Parents cannot be chickens. And, even having a good sex talk. And I used to tell people for years that you need to have a good sex talk by age 11. Well, the truth is the last 7-8 years, I've been saying it has to be age 9, that you have to have a really thorough, clear sex talk because the average age that little boys are running into pornography is 9.5 right now. And if we wait till 11 to give them a God-blessed version of what sex is all about, they've already been watching stuff for up to 2 years sometimes. And so we've had kids as young as 7 getting up at night that we've had to hear stories and work with where they're up at night looking at porn on mom's iPad at age 7 because there hasn't been protections. They've got involved into it. And so parents need to be talking about these things because you can't control them everywhere. Make sure your house is safe. That's really important. But then you have to have the conversation about all the dangerous topics and give a God-blessed, wise, principled explanation, not just, don't do that, stay away from that. Then it becomes almost like sexy to go do, you know? And we have to make sure that we give some reasons and some concerns.
So
and that would be
education is key. Education for the kids is key, absolutely. What degree should parents have a say in who their teenagers hang around with? Is it okay for parents to say no to having a friend who may be a bad influence?
Well, we all want to do that. The problem is, if I simply say, I don't want you to hang around Bill anymore. Bill's bad news. He's likely doing wrong, you know, whatever. Well, my kids will come back and say, well, you're just judging him, Dad. You don't know him. And well, the truth is, I am judging him. I'm judging a face by its color, right? And so it's not fair, but we have to share our concerns. What I have found the secret, because I worked 22 years with high school and college kids, but is the best thing to do if your son or daughter brings home somebody questionable, instead of rejecting them and saying, don't spend all with him anymore. It's bad news. I don't want you to see him anymore and all that. What they do is they just go underground with the relationship. You just don't know about it anymore. And so the best thing to do is to, my story is always about Leroy. I call him Leroy the Lizard. Leroy comes in with a mohawk. He's got, tatties, and he's got earrings and nose rings and nipple rings. And he's just, I'm sure he's doing drugs, and what needs to happen is I need to love Leroy the Lizard and let my kid bring him to my house. I need to do my best to be Jesus to this kid, because he likely comes from a gong show family where he needs to see love and something different. And when I do that, then my kid can actually make assessments as whether they want to have Leroy in their life without having to defend him with me, because I've already accepted him. We've had times when we've done that and the kids, Leroy keeps coming back to visit mom and dad here, and they don't even hang out with our kids anymore, but they felt safe with us, right? And so be careful, parents, because if you simply forbid girl to see this boy, or you can't hang out with these kids, they will just start doing it subversive very often, especially as they get older.
Now, when it comes to social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and so forth, what do parents need to be aware of, and how should the boundaries really be set?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest problems, Hal, is parents get so excited about being wonderfully loved parents by giving their kid a cell phone. And I would argue that if the laws of the land say that you can't get your driver's license to 16, and even after that, you're going to be monitored for 2 years with a letter L or N or whatever, that we as parents should have the courage to say, no, you don't get a cell phone on your own until you're 16. At 14, you can share a phone with me. And at 12, you can use my phone. But if you have a graduated system for licenses, why don't you have a graduated system for phone use? But too many times, kids at 10 and 11 already got their own phone, or they might have their own iPod. Yeah, they have complete internet access. Remember, kids aren't using phones to talk on the phone. Talk on the phone for the typical teenager doesn't happen anymore. It's all texting. It's all that. And so they need the data, and they want internet access, and that's what drives them. So again, we've got all kinds of coaching on how to talk to kids about digital boundaries and how to hold them. And matter of fact, that's what one of our favorite seminars is: technological warfare, preparing your kids for online battle. And it's all the whole digital world. And so, yeah, it's a great thing to do for parents to talk it through, have a graduated system. Matter of fact, one of the most practical tips might be at say 9:30 at night, every electronic device in the home is now going to be stored and charged on dad's dresser in the bedroom. Nothing's going to be in the room overnight. Why? Because that's when the garbage happens over and over again. That's already been determined. So, well, I need it for my alarm in the morning. Well, here, I'll buy you a clock you can wind up. There's your alarm. Oh, I need to listen to music. Oh, no, we'll give you this to listen to music. Because if they have internet access in the night, they're constantly tempted to, a friend's talking to me, or I'm going to watch this or whatever. And that's where trouble happens. So a centralized charging station is critical.
Hey, you know what? I'm all part of that portable little stereo system that you put on the shoulders. It'll take me back to the 70s and 80s. I love it anyways. That's great. Now, a big part of parenting is the process of really passing your faith onto your kids. How can we do this, Dr. Dave, most effectively?
Well, parents won't like it, what I'm going to say, but it is all on the authenticity of your faith. If they can't see it, feel it, touch it in you, it doesn't matter what you say to them, they won't buy in. Kids have very little chance of becoming what you say, but they have at least a fighting chance by the help of God of becoming who you are. So the number one thing for parents, if you want to pass on your faith well, is live an authentic, genuine faith and walk it out day to day. Don't just put on a show on Sundays because the kids see it and they go, this is garbage, this is phony, because Dad puts on the show when Pastor Joe is there. But then, on Tuesday morning, Dad was just raising Cain, even throwing a few F-bombs around. And, well, this faith doesn't make any sense, right? And this is where we've got to challenge parents to live their faith on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and let God help them lead with a soft heart, where God is leading through his love. If we have grace-based parenting instead of guilt-based parenting, it'll change everything.
Practice what you preach. Now, we have a lot of broken families out there today. Is there any special advice you have for single parents and how to really relate well to their teenagers?
Yeah. First of all, my heart goes out to any single parent. It's a hard thing to do. It's a challenging thing to be solo. And always wise to try to bring in brothers, cousins, uncles, dads to help support those men and women who are single parents. That's really critical. But beyond that, help them realize that the same principles that a two-parent family would have is still true for them. Harder to do because they're doing it by themselves, although they don't have to fight over their rules because they just set them themselves. So in one sense, it's easier because they're not fighting with their spouse about what we're going to do. But at the same token, it's really critical for them to believe, though they're working alone, the principles are still the same. Okay?
Dr. David Curry, president of Doing Family Right, thanks a lot for joining me today from Abbotsford, British Columbia.
God bless you. Thanks so much, Hal.
You too. On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and have a great night.